when I heard that he was starting Duke City Championship Wrestling there in Albuquerque, I was excited to come and see the product and be a part of it. Almost try to make it look like as much of like a movie as I can, right?
Because wrestling can do amazing things for people if they give it a chance. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Downtime in the Ring. This week, we have a staple to Duke City Championship Wrestling. We have a man who has traveled all over the place and very high regards. He was actually recommended to us by one of the owners of Duke City Championship Wrestling. Fred Slow himself was like, hey, we have to set up this for your show. And I was like, of course, if you recommend him, that means he's somebody important. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the one, the only, Tyler Copeland to our episode.
Excited to be here, man. Donovan, Chris, really excited to, connect. Yeah, I know we met at one of the last DCCW shows. So ever since I heard about this opportunity, I've been excited to just kind of get on and, chat about my time in DCCW and just pro wrestling in general. So excited for it.
Dude, so with this this buildup that's been going on with Duke City Championship Wrestling going into this August 31st show, Fred, or at least whoever has been writing the articles, which I believe it is Fred, has been putting over a bunch of members of the Duke City Championship Wrestling crew. And it was crazy to see that you came across the board in that and the history that you and Fred have. Do you want to go into that a little bit? Because reading that, I was like, man, that is insane that both of you guys are from St. Louis, and then you compete here and he's the owner of Duke City.
Yeah, most definitely. Fred and I, we went to the same high school, so we've known each other for many years, going back 20 years even. And when it comes to like our history together in pro wrestling, I actually used to promote shows in the St. Louis area on the Illinois side of St. Louis in the early 2010. So from about 2012 to 2015, I was a promoter for a wrestling organization in the St. Louis area. And that was the time that kind of Fred got involved with things, because I knew he was doing podcasts. I knew he was doing a lot of radio type work. And he always expressed interest to doing a wrestling commentary. So, what we did at the time is I gave him, I said, come on in, feel free to set up commentary, set up shop at one of my shows. And, he kind of got his commentary start in wrestling at a few of the shows that I was promoting in those kind of earlier years, which it's crazy to think that's, 12, 13 years ago now in that time frame. So we go way back in that aspect and always stayed connected throughout the years. So when I heard that he was starting Duke City Championship Wrestling there in Albuquerque, I was excited to come and see the product and be a part of it. And I'm sure that we'll get into that as well.
It's so rare for people who, graduate with other people to stay in contact. And it seems like wrestling kept you guys together, which is amazing because wrestling can do amazing things for people if they give it a chance. Where did you start training? Give us a little bit about your background in professional wrestling.
Absolutely. So I started training in 2011 in the St. Louis area at a school that was called Broadway at the time. South Broadway Athletic Club does monthly wrestling shows in downtown St. Louis. And I trained with a trainer named Brandon Espinosa and some other trainers in the St. Louis area. So spent a lot of time, in the training center week to week. Got my start there in the St. Louis area, and really from there it kind of took off once I started working shows, whether it was the St. Louis area. We'd all pile in a car and drive to Tennessee, Memphis area, Nashville, random parts of Tennessee, and just like kind of local states in the Midwest. So, but all the training in that was based right there in St. Louis, which has a very definitely a very large wrestling scene to it. So there's a few schools in St. Louis to this day.
Hey, you know what? That's something that we're going to have to travel and go see, because I want to see as many territories as I possibly can. So in your career, and I wanted to touch this as early as I possibly could, because it's amazing work what you do. And I know Chris was super excited. Actually, I'll let Chris ask this because he was super excited when we were doing our research.
So, a couple of videos that I came across on the YouTube on your YouTube particularly, there's you have an approach with your promos and your packaging of your character, like the cinematics, but the cinematics behind your promos with like the Squid Game style stuff and like just like the intensity. How do you kind of how did you come into making that for yourself or getting into that kind of realm of okay, in terms of presentation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I kind of group my little wrestling career into two different categories. Kind of like the first half is from 2012, and I really got started till 2018, where I kind of stepped away for a few years and then came back in 2021. So when I came back in 2021, I really had the idea to do kind of the higher level cinematic promos, almost try to make it look like as much of like a movie as I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the time, I just, I had the thought process of who do I know that is a strong video, video editor, strong videographer, things like that. So just had the right resources because when I was making a comeback in 2021, I wanted to be able to kind of drop some videos that stood out, that kind of weren't seen in other areas of the wrestling industry. Um, so that's kind of that was kind of my idea, is just having the right people around me, and wanted to kind of have some fresh ideas, like you saw with the Squid Game video, which that's awesome that you saw that one. That's one of my favorite ones. Um,
Absolutely, that's
so
my favorite.
yeah, just wanted to be creative and do something different with it. And I even did. I'm not sure if you saw the cinematic one I did in Albuquerque earlier this year with Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was kind of, still to this day, I like to every now and then throw one of those in, get one of the videographer friend of mine in, and put something like that creative together, because I do think it stands out.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of times that I see an indie wrestler. Like oftentimes it's like either on the higher end of an like a tenured guy in the indie scene, or even a guy who came from a larger company back down, coming out with those kind of style promo videos or like cinematic style master classes. Oftentimes, like you say, they work with a videographer and stuff. But seeing yours and like the amount, like it got me sold on the character of Tyler Copeland, just let alone like with the Tommy Test one. That's something that I would like to pursue into making like video packages for like storied rivalries, and going into like presenting someone such as yourself or even someone even on the indie scene to kind of like help get that name out there, or even like, oh, this is interesting, you got to see this guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, so definitely something I want to continue, but just trying to put pieces of work together that stood out and are different. I'm very character heavy. Whether that is putting a video like that together and pushing it out, or just a promo. Anytime I can get an opportunity to kind of like speak on the microphone, I try to take that, because I feel like it's one of my strong points. I typically won't be the guy to go in there and have the flashiest moves ever, right? Or like do the um, some of the most like high flying things of that nature. So where I really stand out, where I know my greatest strengths are the character work, the promos, things like that. So I
Like
really try to emphasize on that.
you explained a lot of it, but what was that first initial idea? You're like, I'm coming back. It's 2021. We've kind of gone a little bit over a year without wrestling, or under a year without wrestling because of the pandemic. What made you think, you know what, I'm gonna make these cinematic promos that nobody on the indies is doing? And we've gotten the honor of, interviewing a lot of vets who are 10, 15 years in the business, and their promos don't even touch anything creatively like that. What was the initial idea to that?
Yeah. So I honestly, what it was is it was 2021, and I knew that if I I came back and wrestled again, that I didn't want to just like announce it, or didn't want to just show up. I wanted to drop a video that is unlike anything people have seen before. I wanted to really kind of make a statement. So I'm not sure if y'all were able to see that one. It's on YouTube and my Facebook, and it's Tyler Copeland returns to wrestling.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
and I actually uploaded it earlier this year. Other than that, it was just on other social media outlets, so it was uploaded a little late, so it's probably a little lower on the views, but it is on YouTube now. But that one specifically kind of tells like a cinematic story of myself and you know, another guy walking down a hallway, and we're both in suits, and we approach you know, he's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I'm like, and nobody knows what we're talking about. And he's like, and I'm like, "Yeah, we got to do it or something." And then we approach a door that's got like caution tape on it, and he's like, "Are you sure again?" And I say, "Yeah." And then I just kick the door open, go in, and there's nothing but a dimly lit table with a button switch with a red button on it. And kind of as I sit down, it starts showing like flashbacks of the matches from like the 2010s, and then it's like a reset button almost. And then I hit it, and then it goes into the announcement coming back this day. And at the time, I was traveling a lot for work, so I filmed that scene of me kind of announcing it on the cliffs of like Santa Cruz. I think it was Santa Cruz, California, at Panther Beach. So I don't know. It was just I just wanted to do something over the top and wild for the announcement, you know.
And do you think that you're gonna continue doing that? Because I love like the Squid Games parody, I love, but now that you started that, come on, dude, you have to keep going with more parodies because there's so many different things that you could do.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's I have so much fun shooting videos like that, and you know, working with the guy, the videographer that I work with the most. His name's Kenrick Chambers. He is also a wrestling manager named The Landlord. So I promoted shows up until 2015, and then he actually took that company over and started running shows himself from there. So we go way back partnering. So when I reach out to him for a video, we've already got a lot of history and bounce ideas off each other and go from there. And he knows Fred real well as well. But yes, I plan on continuing those moving forward as long as I am.
And as far as like particularly with the video with Tommy, have you been a lot open to people that you are working with in the ring or preparing to work with to like, hey, we should start doing like a hype rivalry style hype video in that regard to, of course, kind of like garner attention to the feud, of course, kind of making it a big deal for the upcoming show at that time. Is it kind of something that you have to work with your opponent or with a fellow wrestler that like, hey, this is how we're going to attempt it? Is there like a process that you have to, or kind of ease them into something like that?
Yeah, no. So I'm when we're filming the cinematic stuff with my opponent, I'm there with them too. So we're filming a lot of different angles. We're filming a lot of things, and there's times too. And Tommy did great with the whole filming process. But you know, there's times with other folks that I've filmed some of the cinematic stuff with, whether it's them training or like us promo back and forth. We'll stop. We'll relook at things and reshoot things if we need to. And you know, we'll pause and I'll say, hey, you know, try doing it this way, or you know. I feel having all of us in the same room to ensure that we're telling the same story is the best kind of process for that. So we're just honest with each other, you know, and nobody takes offense to it if it's like, and people have told me the same thing, like, hey, you should reshoot that, but you know, do it this way, you know, and we'll reshoot things and push them out. But we're all involved in the same project, so it's not like I'm filming my stuff, he's filming his stuff, and then we tie it together. We're typically, or at least I'm in the same room with everyone who's working on that project to kind of make sure that we're telling the same story.
I see.
Yeah.
This is so cool because you know the quality, and I was telling Chris when he was showing me the videos, because he was the first one, he did his side of the research, and he was like, hey, you have to watch this. And so I saw it and I was like, oh my god, this is like the TNA style. The way that they continue their stories out of the building and all of that. And I was like, I love this. I'm a weird mark for that. I love like the creativity that TNA has. A lot of people don't, but that's okay. So I was definitely getting excited for this. I was like, this is unique. This is something that I can't say I've seen before. And I'm super excited to see what else you can come up with in the future.
Thanks, man. So, yeah, and a good storyline helps motivate me. So the whole storyline with Tommy was awesome, and that I really wanted to put something together with him to kind of end it. So you know, as I get involved in a good storyline, that's really what does it for me and makes me want to put something like that together.
So let's get into the bigger part of why we want to push this episode out is Duke City Championship Wrestling, and you have become like a staple of this company, my guy, and you're not even from here.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I definitely didn't expect it either. You know, Fred reached out to me when he had started Duke City Championship Wrestling, and you know, invited me to come wrestle on a show. It would have been a year ago now, so August DCCW show at the El Rey Theater last year. And my expectation was to come be a part of one show, have that experience, be able to say wrestle in New Mexico, came and supported Fred, and kind of go from there, and really just have a one-off, because it's it's well across the country for me. So but through that experience, unexpectedly, I didn't realize I was going to be walking into what I walked into, and that was like an insane production value. The production value of the Duke City Championship Wrestling presentation, what their their weekly TV, their presence on YouTube, the lighting, the production of the day of the show stood out and impressed the hell out of me. The crowd is so energized, is so into the product, that just hearing the crowd as I was walking out and seeing the way they were to react to things and how invested they were in the product, that hooked me. And then, of course, the roster as well. Just a roster full of great talent, great guys, great ownership group as well. Immediately made friends with a lot of people there. Um, and I tell this story a lot. I just moved back to St. Louis. I lived in Texas for 2 years, and I would tell this story all the time that you know I've been to New Mexico just a few times, and compared to the just 1 or 2 days I've been in New Mexico in the last year, the entire 2 years I lived in Texas, I made more friends in New Mexico just on those very few visits. Like, the people are just seem to just very friendly, you know what I mean, very outgoing. Um, so it was just a combination of many things that kept me coming back, and kept me going. And I've been out there about 11 times since last October now, or
And
last August.
and the DCCW fans, they're very passionate about their show, about that company particularly. And one of the posts that I had seen from Fred was that DCCW fans hate Tyler as much as I love him. Can you kind of like unpackage that as far as um like that relationship you have with the fans as being a heel, and do you find yourself kind of coming into a face turn in that regard, or are you kind of keeping it with that heel train for a little bit longer?
I think a face turn would be tough for me in New Mexico, but just because I've really built up a hatred with that crowd. But nothing's impossible. I'm having a lot of fun working the heel character. Um, but I had a face run in St. Louis in the 2010s, and that was a blast too. That worked out well. So, I mean, you never know what will happen. But as of right now, at least, when you're a heel, you walk out there. When you get boos, that's the same thing as getting cheers if you were a good guy. And you guys were there. You can tell that they clearly disdain me. So
Yep.
they hate me. So definitely doing the right thing there. But having fun with it as a heel right now. But you never know what could happen in the future.
So enough about Duke City for a little bit. Let's get back into your career. As much as I see of you in Duke City, I don't really see a lot of other bookings, and maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. Where are some other places that you are more prominent in taking bookings around the country?
So it is only Pro Wrestling Epic, and that is the the organization I work for in St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
So my goal in coming back was not to wrestle as frequently as I am right now. What changed that for me was Duke City Championship Wrestling. So my goal was to really keep a lighter schedule, right? So I think when I did come back in 2021, it was August of 21, but I didn't wrestle again until that Squid Game entrance in December of 2021. It was maybe to bring wrestling back, but maybe just a few matches a year. So I don't really have a goal of expanding into multiple promotions at this point. It's more so just to stay consistent with Pro Wrestling Epic in the St. Louis area, and then as well as of course, unexpectedly, Duke City Championship Wrestling in New Mexico. But I mean, of course, unless I got a call for like a major opportunity or something, obviously that'd be a different story. But um, I'm more so past the point of kind of expanding and trying to do something every weekend, and mainly just involve myself in storylines I can invest in, whether that's in Pro Wrestling Epic in St. Louis or Duke City Championship Wrestling in New Mexico. And probably wrestle a little less frequently than I am right now. So I think that'll be kind of the next step.
With something that I think that you would probably be better at, like transitioning into wrestling less, is like mentoring younger wrestlers to try to get more of a social media presence and working on their promos, because that's something that, and like Chris said earlier, he alluded to it, we've interviewed a lot of wrestlers who are even younger than us, and just the camera presence is something that they struggle with. Is there any advice that you could give them to kind of help younger wrestlers who are trying to break into the business but are camera shy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I've noticed it when I've either been there when someone was filming a promo and kind of stepped in and gave them some advice right there on the spot, or while I was filming video packages with someone, and was able to, pause, hey, try it this way, that kind of thing. But that's absolutely, I mean, if I were going to mentor or help in that capacity, it would for sure be on character work. It would definitely be on promos. It would definitely be on presentation, things like that. That would be my area of, I would even say, like, expertise to help someone and mentor them on. To be totally honest with y'all, I didn't really do anything to, unique to obtain it myself. I kind of just luckily somehow naturally had it since I had started, but I think it's definitely something that can be mentored.
Especially with like other indie stars like Academia with her little skits that she does on her Instagram, and like Brooke Havoc with her posts and stuff like that. But I like, over the course of doing the show, I've gotten to see more and more that, like, oh, this person does have camera presence, this person doesn't. This one's got a sense of what his character's like, this one's still trying to figure it out. And it's that fine line of trying to build that connection between the two. And oftentimes it's just a matter of, hey, shoot a video, don't like it, retake, shoot it, retake until you get that one take. And Donovan can kind of attest to that, especially since I'm a contracted videographer too, where it's like, hey, keep going, get more comfortable, keep going, and stuff like that.
So you said you started training back in 2011. What made you want to become a wrestler?
Yeah, no, so it was always from being a fan just since I was a kid, in the late 90s, the Attitude Era. I was kind of raised on the WCW side of things, of course, rewatch now, of course, everything WWF back then, but it was just always being a fan from that time period. And that, I think from like 2021, so whenever WCW was had ended, through like 2006, I didn't watch. There was like a 5-year hiatus, but in high school I got back into watching it, and then as soon as right after high school, I went to boot camp for the Army National Guard. So right when I came back, I was like, you know what, I gotta get into training for this. I gotta find a training school in St. Louis. Luckily, there were many to choose from, and went kind of straight into it from there.
So you've always been in shape. Were you like an athlete in high school, or you just immediately out of high school you were like, I'm gonna join the military, and then that's how you stayed in shape?
Yeah, no. So actually, it's funny. I was not an athlete in high school. I was very small. I was really small in high school. And then when I went to the military, I stayed small there because we stay active and it's a lot of running. So even getting out of the military at that point, I was still really small. So just getting into the gym and dieting and knowing that I wanted to build muscle and be involved in wrestling, and just kind of maintained it ever since. Just a passion for wrestling is what made me get in the gym. It wasn't coming from being an athlete in high school. It wasn't coming from the military. Believe it or not, it was just pure, just kind of drive to, get bigger and be a part of wrestling. Find a school in St. Louis.
Okay. As far as like WCW is concerned, I know WCW before it ended, their main focus in the latter years was that the bad guys were the cool guys, right? Which was there any one of those bad guys that you kind of gravitated towards, like, i.e., like your Hogans or your Scott Halls or even anyone from the NWO, or was there someone that you kind of saw as like that you kind of modeled off of your character, or like most other indie wrestlers, they kind of just take pieces and bits to mold into something super specific for yourself?
When it comes to WCW specifically, definitely it was like Hall and Nash were my two favorites, and then Hogan was in there too, of course, like from the heel standpoint. But for sure those two. Sting was a favorite like face of mine as well in WCW. But post WCW, like when I actually started thinking about wrestling, I was watching. That was like my high school year, so I was watching a lot of TNA, right? So I would hear like Christian Cage's promos and things like that, and that would really give me ideas and motivate me. I watched a lot of Ring of Honor at that time too, so that was the time period of like Jimmy Jacobs and Age of the Fall, right? So which I was a huge fan of that area. We drive up from St. Louis to Chicago to watch the Ring of Honor shows when they would come to Chicago, which that was a huge market for them. So a lot of the heels from the TNA and the Ring of Honor at the time really sparked my interest, and I looked up to them and the way that they presented themselves and spoke. To add to it, I think I was thinking like what was when I was actually looking at characters that were that I could model my own approach after. It wasn't really realistic to model the way I was going to approach things after someone who was like 6'4", 6'5", and jacked, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm about 5'8", and then I was a lot smaller, but still 5'8" alone, 200 pounds. I'm small. I would be a smaller guy compared to the guys in the Fed at that time, at least. So realistically, kind of seeing some of these smaller guys and the way that they could play off the heel and still be a feared heel and still be taken seriously in that aspect. I think that helped things too, is to see some kind of some of the smaller guys play that heel character for the first time during that time period, because you didn't see a lot of it before then.
Yeah. I think the precursor for you and why I like your character is when Eric Young debuted his kind of heelish character before going into NXT, I believe, where he had the jacket, he had the tattoo on the one arm, he was just ruthless, but it was EY. Yeah, I've always known him as like Showtime Eric Young, but then all of a sudden he's just this weird, crazy madman all of a sudden because he lost the title. So that's the precursor I had for you, because you have that similar, like you say, small guy, but you don't see them often like being that like ruthless heel. So yeah, I like that.
Most definitely.
We begin to wind down. One thing that I want to ask is, are we going to see Tyler Copeland at Locked In on the 31st?
That's the plan as of right now. Yeah. I don't believe the graphic is out yet, but it should be myself and Turbo Tony again. So in May, Turbo Tony and I went to a draw. It was the first ever kind of MVP match that's a sponsored match with a 5-minute time limit. We go to a draw. Then in June we have the tag team match with myself and Jalen is it Monroe? I always forget his last name.
Yeah, Jalen Monroe. Jalen Monroe.
Jalen Monroe, who's awesome, and so it was he and I, and this is the show that y'all were at versus Turbo Tony and Tommy Test in that no DQ hardcore match. So I got the pin on Turbo there. So he's really reached out for the rematch to management, and then I've accepted it. So the plan is, if everything kind of irons out smoothly, it should be he and I that night in Rio Rancho.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, especially after taking that like crazy chair bump during that match. How did you feel out like after of course it's obviously gonna hurt, but like why would maybe because I'm not a pro wrestler, why would I wouldn't want to openly agree to doing a chair bump like that? That's like ooh.
Yeah, so well, I felt it. Well, obviously when I went down, I felt it, but as soon as I could roll around a little bit and I was realizing I was still mobile, I was like, okay, good. At least I might be bruised tomorrow, but at least I seem to be good for now. But
that was probably one of the most brutal bumps I've seen live in a while, man.
Oh yeah, I felt that. I definitely felt it. Yeah.
So for anybody who's wondering what we're talking about, one, you can head over to Duke City Championship Wrestling's YouTube channel and actually watch the Summer Sizzle match featuring the team of Turbo Test and Monroe and Copeland. What happened is that three sets of chairs were lined up and you were just thrown into the middle of them. I'm correct with that, right?
Yeah. So there were four set up, and Turbo Tony, the fireman's carry, Death Valley Driver, and the way I land, you see like half of my body land on the chairs, half of them off the chair. So it's very very brutal.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You also got hit in the head with a jug of protein,
Powder.
didn't you?
Yeah.
You
I got
did.
blinded by protein powder. Yep. Right before that. So the way that Turbo was able to get me up on the shoulders for the move is Tommy grabbed some, I don't know where the protein powder came from, but he had a scoop of protein and he, threw it in my eyes. I'm blinded all of a sudden. And, next thing I know, I'm getting flatlined on chairs.
Yeah, we were upstairs watching because we had been done recording, and so we were given permission to sit upstairs, and I'm just watching you guys, and I believe Chris was looking at the monitor. We both were looking down, and I was like, "Oh, that's horrible. That's gonna hurt later." And I just hear a bunch of people just cheering, and I'm like, "Okay, we're figuring out who's loved and who's hate even more now."
Oh yeah.
So before we end the podcast and get into the post show, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so right now it's primarily on just on Facebook. My wrestling, unfortunately, I don't have any separation. It's for just Tyler Copeland right now. It's on Duke City Championship Wrestling's. My Instagram's currently down, but by the time this podcast is up and viewed, or by the time someone were to see it, maybe it will be back up, which is infamous_TC. So I'm right now in the process of just totally revamping the Instagram. I wasn't posting enough, so I'd like it when it's up. I'd like it to be frequent and posting enough. And then also on YouTube. However, I don't know what the channel is called, but it sounds like you guys had it pulled up, so it might just be Tyler Copeland.
We'll have it in the.
You can tell I'm working on that. Yeah, you can tell I'm working on that social media.
So. You gotta have a link tree, brother, so you can just say, "Copy my link tree," and we'll just have it down there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of Downtime. I was going to say Duke City Championship Wrestling. Of Downtime in the Ring. Thank you guys for watching this episode. We appreciate you guys. We will see Tyler August 31st, locked in Rio Rancho Event Center. This one's going to be huge.